Imagine being born in ancient Greece. If you were a woman, your entire future, everything from your education to your rights to your freedom, pretty much came down to one single fact: where you were born. Forget thinking of Greece as just one place. For women, it was a tale of two completely different worlds. So today, we're going to dive into those two worlds: the intellectual, democratic city of Athens and the tough, military-focused state of Sparta.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start by looking at what life was like inside the home. Then we'll check out their education, their legal power when it came to things like marriage and property, and what their public life looked like. And at the end, we'll ask which of these two legacies feels stronger.
Okay, let's get right into it. The big question we're exploring is this: if you had to choose, would you rather have grown up as a girl in Athens or in Sparta? Let's find out.
First things first, what was life like inside the home? This is where the differences between these two places really start to pop.
To really get what life was like for an Athenian woman, you've got to know this one word, the gynoecion. This wasn't just, a room in the house. For most women, it was their entire world. Their days were spent right here, physically cut off from the outside, all to keep them away from strangers and protect the family's reputation.
I mean, just look at this contrast. It is night and day. An Athenian woman was the manager of everything that happened inside the house. But in Sparta, whoa. The men were away in military barracks most of the time, so the women were basically running the whole show. We're talking about managing huge farms, the family finances, everything.
Next up, let's talk about education. You can tell a lot about a society by how it educates its kids. And boy, did Athens and Sparta have completely different game plans for their girls. So in Athens, a girl's education was pretty much all done at home, taught by her mom. It was focused on the skills she'd need to be a good wife, things like weaving cloth and managing the food supplies. Some girls might have learned to read, but it wasn't the standard. The whole point was to prepare her to run a household like clockwork. Sparta, on the other hand, was a whole different story. Their thinking was really straightforward. If you want strong warriors, you need strong mothers to raise them. It's that simple. So the state actually stepped in and made sure girls got a formal education. They had tough physical training, competed in sports, and they were also taught to read and write. The goal here was to raise women who were just as strong and smart as the men.
Okay, so they lived in different worlds. They learned totally different things. But who actually held the power? Let's talk money, property, and the huge decision of who a woman would marry.
Okay, get this. This number is absolutely mind-blowing for the ancient world. In Sparta, women could actually inherit land, and by the 4th century BC, they owned almost half of it. Think about that. This wasn't just some number on a page, it was real, tangible economic power. It gave them a kind of independence that was just unheard of anywhere else in Greece.
Now, Athens. The situation couldn't be more different, and it all comes down to this one concept, the kurios. Basically, an Athenian woman was never considered a legal adult, ever. She was always under the legal control of a man, first her father, then her husband, and if he died, her son or some other male relative. He made every single legal and financial decision for her. This chart really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? Look at the marriage age. Athenian girls were married off as young as 14 in matches made by their kurios. Spartan women married later, when they were older. And property? It's a hard no in Athens versus a definite yes in Sparta. It just shows this huge gap in personal and financial freedom.
All right, let's talk about public life. How a woman could appear in public, what she wore, where she could even go, tells you so much about her place in that society.
Yeah, for a good Athenian woman, public life was pretty much non-existent. She almost never left the house, and if she did, it was usually for something like a religious festival, and you can bet she had a male escort. But Spartan women, they were out and about, moving around freely. It was totally normal to see them active outdoors, even competing in sports.
Even their fashion tells the whole story. In Athens, it was all about these long, heavy robes. The goal was modesty, to hide the body. But in Sparta, they wore shorter, simpler clothes, often with a slit up the side. And why? It was all about function. Their clothes were made for moving, for an active life.
So, we've walked through these two completely different realities. What's the bottom line here? What did each of these societies really truly value in its women?
Okay, let's boil it all down. In Athens, a woman's power was private, inside the home. It was all about keeping the family unit strong and orderly. In Sparta, a woman's power was public.
It was tied to owning land and, crucially, raising tough soldiers for the state. In both places, being a mother was the most important job, but the reason was different. One was for the family line, the other was for the army.
And that brings us to one last big question. Athens gave us philosophy and democracy, built on the idea of a very private, protected family life. Sparta gave us one of the most legendary military forces in history, built on the public duty of everyone, men and women included. Both of these powerful societies absolutely depended on their women, but they asked them to build two totally different worlds. So you have to wonder, which approach, a stable home or a strong state, actually made for a better society in the long run? That's definitely something to think about.